Iowa's News Now Sports has your all-access pass to all things Hawkeyes. This is Eye on the Hawks.
Yeah, I think if Luke heard you say the word solid, he might try to strangle you, because that's a word in our room that we don't like, because solid means average. Okay, so, but you don't know that? There's a long story that goes back to the specialists at Iowa that the word solid.
And we'll get more of that story at the end of what we hope will not be a solid podcast here. A final Eye on the Hawks spring football preview here on a Friday. If you're watching on the YouTube channel, the Iowa's News Now YouTube channel, thanks for tuning in, and we'll get you plenty of highlights. I think this is maybe the most video-heavy podcast we've had, just in terms of position-by-position video for every single spot as we get ready for spring
trying
scrimmage.
To put me to work today, huh?
Oh, it's a lot. Listen, Sony CI, or however you pronounce it, is overflowing with Hawkeye highlights from 2024 and a little bit of spring stuff in there as well. Mitch Fick and Mike Howell here on this Friday. If you're listening ahead of the game, maybe you're driving down to Kinnick Stadium for the spring scrimmage, we thank you for tuning in. A lot to get to. We heard from the coordinators for the first time this spring on Wednesday. So Tim Lester, Phil Parker, and as you just heard there off the top, LeVar Woods, with some context for why solid is it's a 5-letter word, but it's a 4-letter one in the special teams room. We'll break down that and kind of go through position by position, really with this, what we've heard from coordinators and players so far here in the spring, what we think we've maybe figured out or learned over these last few weeks, and we'll wrap things up with what we're looking forward to on Saturday, maybe the 3 things, if not specific positions, just overarching themes there, and with a guy who was so important to 2024's team, maybe at the end of this, Mike, we'll kind of look at maybe our 3 or 4 favorite Caleb Johnson plays or moments from 2024. I've got one off the top of my head that a lot of people probably don't know about, that I was lucky to get a shot of, and I'll post it later. And so a really, really fun moment after the fact, because it could have turned into something unnecessarily rough, but it didn't. But we'll focus forward on our focus today, which is hearing back from the coordinators in, of course, year 2 of the Tim Lester offense. Everyone is sights set on quarterbacks and wide receivers and a new offensive line transferring and everything like that. So Tim Lester on Wednesday was last at the podium, but we'll start with him first, talking about what he sees from Mark Gronowski, what Mark can bring to the table as a guy who's played 55 some odd games and thrown for as many yards as he has and won all the titles he has and won awards and all that. And then the wide receiver room, what that's starting to look like in year 2, and then a running back room that sounds like it's not just going to be one guy, and there's some interesting wrinkles there happening in Omar Young's new room that Liddell Betts put together. So let's spend a couple minutes with Tim Lester.
What can a quarterback of his skill set really unlock in terms of what you want to do schematically?
I think the biggest thing, when you have a quarterback that can consistently provide positive football plays, it's a big word, positive football plays, especially when you're calling it aggressively, where he can bail you out of, hey, this is a bad look, just check it down, get us a yard, throw it away for all I care. Just don't take a sack, don't throw a pick. And it's been fun. We've had him in the back. He's been taking more mental reps than anyone else. And we see it on the film, so I know exactly where he would have gone. So the receivers know it. They all watch what Mark would have done on that play, because he's pointing to where he would have gone. And 90% of the time, it's the same as the guy that's holding the ball. Now, back there's no pass rush, so he's really comfortable back there, standing up, hopping up and down. But it's been good for him just to get reps, because there's a muscle memory to everything you do, right? So, he's doing all the fake handoffs to nobody, him and his imaginary team back there. But he's having a blast doing it. And when he actually gets out there and he has to bring all the motions and do all the movements, we're just trying to shorten the curve, really, so when he gets out there, we can start seeing a more comfortable version of a guy who's played, I don't even know how many games he's played, a lot. I know how much he's thrown for, which that has to be a lot of games.
We talked to you, I think, last mid-season maybe.
Yeah.
And you're like, the passing game takes the longest in the Shanahan system.
It's taken a long time.
So where's it at now?
It's growing. I think the biggest difference is, one, we're healthy. All our receivers are healthy. When I got here, I was very impressed with the wideout room. They were just young, But when you know what you're doing, you run. You run. We are running right now, which is fun to watch. To watch Seth Anderson run and Weege run, like they're not thinking about what to do. They're thinking about how to run the route. And so there was a lot of thinking going on last year. There's not a lot of thinking going on. It's really just trying to press the issue, especially when you're trying to stretch the field vertically. The ability to run a route and not look back at 5 yards and don't look back for 20, And Seth's done a really good job of that. Dayton's doing a good job of that. So it's been fun just because we're a faster team right now in the passing game because they're running faster. The plays haven't changed. They just have run them, enough times finally. The whole running back room right now it's a fun room to coach. Omar's taken over a extremely healthy room. Adele did an unbelievable job with recruiting in that room. We have moved TJ Washington back. The whole plan was to put TJ at wide receiver so he could learn the pass game. So we now have a running back that knows the pass game, and he's a great running back, and he's really good out of the backfield, which is not something we had last year. And when you're trying to expand your pass game, that's always a good thing to have. So he can really catch the ball. So really that whole group in there, I think it's going to be a running back by committee, but having that experience, watching the way TJ and Kamari ran the ball in the bowl game, they were comfortable. They're putting their foot in the ground. I mean, day one, we handed Kamari the first run of the season, he ran right into the O-line. And he was nervous. I'm sure the game was happening fast, and it slowed down for him, right, which is really the point where he takes off. So I'm excited. He's kind of taking a leadership role in that running back room, and I'm excited for the year he's going to have because he's comfortable, he's ready to play, and he really understands, and can do so many things from running in between the tackles to running on the edges to catching the ball. So we're going to be able to do more things with the running back position, especially with TJ in there, than we were able to do in the past.
I'm really intrigued by this whole send TJ Washington to another position group for a year so he learns that passing game in and out, and now bring him back as a running back. And maybe we saw a little flash of that in the bowl game where he scores a touchdown on a sweep. That's some long-term thinking, which I think tells you a little bit about how Tim Lester looks at this whole thing. Of he's not planning for, hey, let's just get through September, October, November. He had a plan for TJ Washington the minute he got in the room. We talked about him kind of being the guy with the toy box of like, let's figure out all the stuff we can do. He's got his action figure in TJ Washington. Well, he's going to do this, but I want him to do a little bit of everything. I'm just really impressed by that foresight and what he's thinking that long term when it comes to the passing game. And we've heard it from other players too, Mike, that there's like this cautious optimism or even borderline confident optimism of, hey, like we're doing some stuff. And the defense is plugging some veteran holes there as well, but
Sure.
What are the things that you took away from Tim? Let's start with quarterbacks. You got Hank Brown out there. It feels like Jimmy Sullivan's your number 2 and Jackson Stratton's your number 3. What are the things you're looking for tomorrow? Are you more intrigued by Hank or Jimmy? I mean, who's the guy that you're really? We're not going to see a whole lot of marks. Sounds like maybe he's throwing a Nerf ball or something like that.
I wonder if they're getting the Nerf ball out tomorrow.
Yeah, I hope a black and gold Nerf ball.
That'd be sweet.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I'm way more intrigued with Hank. This is on my list of top, things to look for, just because he's going to be taking those 1 snaps. How accurate is he? Iowa really hasn't had like an accurate quarterback up, 60-65% on the season since C.J. Beathard, really. Another thing I'm looking forward to with the quarterback room is, Tim talked about how Jimmy Sullivan's still very raw, still very, very young. So that's one of the reasons why I'm more, excited to see Hank, just because he's more of a finished product. He's going to be that second string, or you think he's going to be that second string with that Wake Forest quarterback coming in. You don't really know, but
Hecklinski, who...
Yeah, I wasn't going to try to say his name.
Yeah, no, he's, what was it, the Polish gunner, or the Polish cannon or something like that. I found a YouTube video of his from 2015 when this Wake Forest kid was 11 years old. Mike and I gathered around my desk the other day and watched a little bit, but he's intriguing. He was
Sure.
a stud in high school too. I'm really intrigued. Hank's going to be fascinating to watch as you see some of the highlights here on the YouTube video. Jimmy Sullivan is the 1 string back to Brian Ferentz. Out of this whole quarterback room from last year, including recruits, everyone that was brought in by Brian Ferentz and during that regime is gone, aside from Jimmy Sullivan, who was offered by Iowa when Ferentz was still here, and he committed to that. So I'm very intrigued to see what Jimmy does. A guy who Tim pointed out, should be getting ready for his senior prom, but he's here early and has been in since the bowl game. Show up during bowl prep, and he's a guy that I know they're really high on out of Fort Wayne. So I'm intrigued to see what he shows. There was a video put up by the social team like a week or so ago in Kinnick where Reese Vanderzee makes a really good shoulder catch. Alex Moda in coverage. We'll talk about Alex here in a little bit too, making the flip to DB. But that was Jimmy Sullivan's ball. And so you have to think like, okay, when he's flashing, like he's doing something good. So it'll be fun to see him. I'm interested to see what Jackson Stratton does after this. What a journey he's had since last year.
Yeah, he almost seems like the forgotten man once they bring in this
Well,
Wake
it's tough
Forest
because
thing.
he was, he got thrown in the spotlight because of injuries, and we've gotten used to that the last couple of years with guys just getting banged up. But, we know more and maybe think more about a guy who's a fourth-string scout team quarterback than almost any other team in America because of what's happened in the quarterback room in the last couple of years. I don't know if Jeremy coming in changes his fate in the offseason, because you also have Ryan Fitzgerald coming in as a walk-on, Pat's kid, and Brendan going to Tulane. Shout out to Sully, finding a spot in New Orleans, where his opener next year, or in this fall, is against Northwestern. I know that probably didn't play a role in committing, but that first week.
College football always has those storylines that pop up.
Certainly interesting, yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why I didn't include him in my first list, and Hank Brown, he's probably, the second string quarterback going in.
He would have been the third guy, or was the third guy until Sully left, yeah.
And with just how the past 4 seasons have gone, with Iowa having an injury at quarterback, like that backup, cross your fingers, knock on wood, whatever, you hope that doesn't happen to Mark this year. It just makes you appreciate the backup role more because it can torpedo a season on a team. Hasn't really done that for Iowa. They still have been found ways to win 8, 10 games when the quarterback play hasn't really been there. It has in some games when backups are in, like Brendan Sullivan, I thought, provided a spark last year when Cade went down. But what it can Hank, give half the stuff that you expect Mark Gronowski to do it at the, in the season next year. Will we find that out tomorrow? Probably not, but I just am excited to see him sling the ball around, make some plays.
I should point out, we just got an email from our engineering department that there's going to be a fire alarm test here in a little bit. So if sirens go off over this, we're going to stay calm, and there's a rhyme and reason for that. So just know that. I'm really intrigued by the wide receiver room, too, and what he said of guys just knowing things. Again, they're healthy. I was talking to Seth Anderson the other day. Just, man, how happy are you to just be healthy for a spring? He said hamstring stuff, shoulders, all that. He's out there feeling good. We got to talk to Sam Phillips for the first time, who I'm really, really high on. Jacob Gill, kind of the forgotten man in all this. He's your leading returning receiver, and what a start he had against Illinois State if you're watching the highlights on YouTube. I mean, your top 6 in that room between Gill, Seth, Sam, Weege, RVZ, and Dayton Howard. They're a young group, but a lot of those guys are really fast. And you got some height there with RVZ and Dayton. Like that's an intriguing group, especially nobody asked questions about tight ends on Wednesday. Mm-hmm. And you only have 5 guys in that room, really. I know it's tight end you, and I'm sure Addison and that room, Zach Ortworth and Hayden Large will get some work. But man, this feels like an offense that's starting to shift towards wide receivers, or at least that's the talk and the feel so far this spring.
That would be awesome if it is.
Imagine that.
How many off seasons have we sat here and talked about, I hope the receivers can do a little better next year?
Every off season since like 20.
Since we started this podcast.
2019 keeps being this thing we really look at of when you had 4 guys go for 400 plus.
We've always had these guys like a Dayton Howard who had 4 catches last year, and you see the talent.
He had the touchdown against Washington.
He had a touchdown against Washington, and you can see it. And then Caden obviously too. Like you can put him in there because they haven't found a way to get him the ball. But I mean that has been a result of implementing a new offense. Heck, Tim said that, on Wednesday he had to teach the coaches last offseason how to teach this Shanahan-type system. Yep. So it probably wasn't realistic to have the offense humming last year unless your quarterback was a little better than what they had.
It humming the way it did is impressive as you're trying to, and he's got a couple.
They're lucky they had Caleb Johnson, not lucky, but
he's got Billy and Warren in there that are analysts that can help him out too, that he seems to be very high on.
But when you're looking back at last season, it's like you with the offensive line and running back, without those two, I was probably fighting for a bowl game. Instead, they did what they did. Actually, I'm blanking on. Yeah, they won 8-5.
Yeah.
I mean, good season, not great, not bad, but the wide receiver group, Gill performed, right? RVZ
he was healthy.
Yeah, a great freshman season, and he looks a little bit bigger. I've heard, right? I wasn't down there. He probably is going to do.
He's taller than me, but everyone's taller than me.
You expect him to take a leap because he's just one of those kids that works hard. So I'm excited, especially with a quarterback with Mark coming in, who is experienced, played 55-something games or whatever, threw for 10,000 yards. You expect him to be a lot more accurate in the passing game. Year 2 with this offense is where you can hope. Now, Hawkeye fans have been there a lot, hoping this passing offense could improve. I think it's bound to improve. I don't know how much higher on the rankings. I think it was 129th last year at an FBS. Does it get to the top 100? I hope so, because I think that they're going to need a little more passing game to be at the level they want to be.
Sure. It's going to be interesting, and Tim brought it up with Mark with muscle memory and just being able to go through those ghost reps, so to speak, those mental reps. The fact that the receivers aren't thinking this year, and that being a good thing, of like you're not so ingrained into trying to get the details down.
Yeah.
They're down now, and now you can just kind of go run. I mean, literally and figuratively is what you're doing. So I think that's exciting, that the fact the installation, you could probably argue, is never fully over, but that foundation is laid, and it's a heck of a lot easier to live in the home, so to speak, when you got a solid foundation. So I think that's what's exciting, and something that's, we'll overreact to a bunch of stuff after Saturday.
Oh, 100%.
But I think there's going to be, I think you have to be hopeful there's going to be some cool stuff. I think Hank's got a lot of confidence from these guys, and,
Will they show it tomorrow, though?
Yeah,
probably
will they show
not.
it? Yeah,
right? What's the
exactly.
incentive to show, like, oh, look, we're going to throw the ball around, which is.
We could use some good highlights.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Good spring highlights to live off for 4 months.
Do you think it was interesting on Wednesday, and I was not a college football athlete or whatever, when Tim mentioned that, I think it was Dayton, was like, running the route, oh yeah, it was man coverage, I could tell. I guess I just assumed in college receivers were looking for that, especially if you have routes where you're like breaking off of as a zone or man. But when I played high school ball, we didn't do that, so maybe not. I just thought at that level, maybe they already did that, but maybe not. So maybe something to ask if we ever have Matt back in.
I guess I thought of it more of just, it's the fact that the pre-snap stuff is doing its job.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff that maybe wasn't there in previous offensive iterations. That now it's like, oh yeah, like here's a little thing that maybe is obvious to everybody watching on TV, but when you're on the field, you're in your head already thinking about how you're going to run your route, or you're seeing something else. You're maybe not even trying to recognize coverage as a receiver. Again, I didn't play, so I don't know. But maybe that's kind of what he was getting at. Those guys are already thinking about so much stuff within this offense that just the pre-snap recognition for you as a receiver rather than a quarterback who's got to know that stuff. Your receiver, you're thinking about your route, and maybe not necessarily, is this guy playing off a little bit, or is he right up on me? He's going to be with me the whole way. So maybe it's something like that.
Maybe it's just, looking back.
38-year-old who didn't play. So.
Yeah, no, like I know there are option routes where it's like, all right, well, if this linebacker's going to come and check you, stem it a little bit or whatever, or if they're playing a cover two, hit this hole right here. That's probably more pro level. I'm certain that some higher level offenses in college football probably already do that. I know the quarterback knows when he's doing the precept, so that's probably the most important part.
That's really the stuff I care about there. Well, of course, that defense we got to look at quite a bit at Iowa as well on Saturday. Phil Parker's got a whole new linebacking core. Defensive backs moving around a little bit. He talked about really the whole gamut here. You've got a couple transfers on the D-line. Sounds like they can maybe plug in right away in Bryce Hawthorne and Jonah Pace coming out of SDSU and Central Michigan. That whole new linebacking core of guys who have played a lot of football already, mostly on special teams. And then the DBs, Chad Leistigo had a great question about who's your number one corner. There's always kind of a definitive number one guy these last few years. Who is it for Iowa in 2025? A few minutes now with Phil Parker.
You've got some big shoes to fill at linebacker. How is Jaden Harrell, Carson Shire, Rex Roth, that group, and the group behind them continue to develop?
I think all three of those guys are really doing a good job. And you kind of go like every year you start going back and you say, hey, the guys that left before, you look at Jay and Nick and Fisher, them guys took off, but who led those guys? You had Campbell before them, and then you start going back. Every one of these guys are good players as you're going. These guys, it's time for them guys to step up, and I think they've been really doing a good job. You look at Montgomery, he's done a good job. So, and really like what Carson's doing,
And the two transfers, can you kind of talk me through each of those three guys and what your impressions have been thus far of those three, Hawthorne and Pace?
Yeah. Hawthorne and Pace, I mean, I think that, obviously they're coming from a good program, and they played a lot of football where they have, and I think they're really going to be able to help us out. I mean, I see those guys getting into the mix right away. I mean, I think them guys obviously give us depth, but, you can see them rolling them in, even on the first series or whatever it is. I think they've done a good job.
I wanted to ask about Xavier Wampa moving from strong to free safety, and why you think that's a better fit for him.
Well, I think it's another opportunity. We had some other guys that were trying to get on the field over there, and I think sometimes if you want to try to bring him down in the box, a bigger guy, it'd be helpful, I think, to bring him down there. I wouldn't say a linebacker depth at times. I guess we'd bring him down, and I think he can see more, and I think he's more comfortable there at free safety. And with Lutmer and Cohen being on the other side, I think it was just a better fit, and I think he's happy there, and I've seen a real big improvement with him the last 3 weeks, so hopefully, we get him healthy and get ready to go for the summertime.
When do you usually know if you've got kind of that number one guy at corner, or do you have that guy yet?
Yeah, I kind of don't like to always give the answers to the test, what I mean? It's like, I like to keep it on, just like I keep my wife off balance, you know what I mean, when I'm coming home. But, I think there's some guys that made some good improvement. I'll go back to TJ Hall. I mean, the progression that he's made from, the first time that he's in there starting until he played a lot last year off and on all of a sudden until where he is right now, I think he's probably made the biggest jump of talking about being exact on every play. He's not perfect. Nobody's perfect and everything, but I've seen the biggest growth is from him is where, you're starting to count on like, hey, I expect him. And the leadership was even better. And I could say that about all the guys right now, all the, the 5 top guys over there that's out there playing right now, holding the other guys, the younger guys, and demanding on, what the expectations is on the field. And, so I'd say right now probably TJ, but Deshaun Lee's done some really good things, so just seeing the growth, but he'd probably be the top one right now.
And good for TJ Hall, man. I mean, talk about a dude that we talked about quite a bit last year, getting thrown in back in 2022 when Coop went out against Nebraska. Got burned, certainly took some lumps last year, but, was Johnny on the spot against Illinois State. Seb Castro had that strip, and he jumped on the fumble. Deshaun Lee got his first career pick last year against Wisconsin, if you're watching the bowl game or the highlights here on YouTube right now. But, man, TJ, whether it was during that Maryland game or right before it, but TJ had that one-handed pick, his first career pick, that was an awesome interception. And that felt like that sparked something. He was kind of everywhere, particularly against Mizzou. He had a couple nice spots. He's already saw one highlight, but yeah, he's a guy that, man, if you can get him turned around a bit, he could be good. You have Zach Lutmer. There is an interesting situation at the cash spot where we heard from Lutt and Cohen and X all kind of rotating within that spot. It's going to be kind of cash by committee, it almost sounds like. Eventually, I suppose you settle on one guy, but that's an interesting spot this spring, figuring out who takes Seb Castro's spot, because, man, he made Cash his own there for a couple of years.
Yeah, you know what they say when you don't have when you have 3 caches, you don't have one. No, this is the time when you play around and you see who's the best for that role, especially when you don't have a returning Castro or something like that, So that will be interesting to see, like, who's with the ones out there, how many people get in at that spot. And, one thing after listening to Phil on this week, he didn't seem too concerned at linebacker, which I think a lot of guys, they're not new to the program, but they're new to starting a linebacker.
Yeah.
So I think it's, it's not like out of the blue to say I'm concerned about replacing these guys who have hundreds of tackles a year. But the one thing they, talked about going into the portal for a potential cornerback if one comes up is, that position. And you've seen TJ Hall, you've seen Deshaun Lee play well, secondary up and up depending on the game last year. Is that for depth purposes? Like, I wonder, that's the one thing I'm, wondering about. Or is it because they just want to put competition? They don't think they don't have that number one cornerback that they have in the past, like a Cooper, like Josh Jackson, go down the list.
Yeah,
Riley Moss, stuff like that. So
I know they've had a couple guys in last couple days. I think one of them's been like a safety. That kid out of Austin P, I think, has been on on campus for a visit or has been in the mix there at least. I think, it is April. You got 4 months to figure it out. But, yeah, I think that's a spot because there were such perceived issues last year, particularly at Michigan State. Troy, thanks to Devontae Ross, who we'll see again against Penn State, that you feel like you can't do enough to shore it up. Get guys in there best you can. You've got some really talented guys stepping into those linebacker roles who, again, have played like 95 games of special teams work in Jaden Harrell and Jackson Rexroth and Carson Shire, who have all flashed on special teams too. I mean, most of our linebacker video that Mike's going to play here is Carson just decking people. Rexroth had a forced fumble in 23 against Nebraska. And, Jaden Harrell, who steps into that Mike spot, well, he learned from Jay, who learned from Jack, so that lineage is there. And he even pointed out a couple weeks ago, we've seen what a guy with 1 or 2 years of a shot can do at these spots. So I think you have to have faith in that. And Kirk was a guy who brought Jaden up a couple years ago, or maybe early last year, of just a guy who was doing well. And those are typically the names you want to keep a little closer eye on. So same thing to you. And kind of what Phil said. I'm not that worried about linebacker, just because how often can you lose a linebacking core like the one Iowa had? And okay, here's all these seniors who have already played a litany of snaps on special teams and some spot starts or spot playing time at linebacker, and here they are. Like they're not spring chickens by any stretch of the imagination. They've played a ton of ball, and you're backing them up with this heralded freshman class that we talked so much about last year in Preston Reese and Cam Buffington and Derek Weisskopf. And it sounds like Reese is a weight room stud, and all those guys, it sounds like, are really making impacts on special teams. They're kind of going to step into those special team spots that those 3 starting linebackers now vacate. And so it does help that you've got that much experience stepping into those roles. It certainly helps that you got a guy like Seth Wallace at the position coaching them up as well.
If I'm looking on the outside, because we've only got to see like a half hour, maybe 20 minutes of practice, and we haven't been able to watch these 3 guys. We'll see them tomorrow. I'd be concerned if they were like the cornerback position, saying, "Hey, we're going to look out for a linebacker." They didn't say anything like that yesterday.
No.
Now, I haven't even heard of them bringing one in. So I think they, Phil Parker, Seth Wallace feel comfortable with that. So that makes me at ease, and I'm not going to worry about it until, unless we're in the season and the play isn't there or there's 2 injuries or whatever. But I still think they have those young guys who could potentially step in. We have to see it. We know how good they were in high school, but this is a different level.
It's, knock on all the wood, when was the last time you felt rough about Iowa linebackers? I mean, every year at least there's one dude who's an absolute anchor and holds it down, and like he can clean up the learning curves for anybody else. I mean, that's just a spot. You might mention it during special teams, but like it always feels like the position that you feel like you don't need to worry about somehow, some way ends up being the one you have to worry about in some fashion. But man, like right now, that linebacker, it's not set it and forget it, but man, there's a lot going into that that's good and positive coming out of spring and going into the fall, just because of all that experience. And again, the depth there, the freshman talent that redshirted last year that gets a chance this year. And then, man, a Seth Wallace linebacker room is always pretty formidable.
Yeah, I don't know. I when you're asking like when's the last time going back, I can't think of one. There was ups and downs, especially when those good linebackers are young and they have to play young.
Sure, yeah.
Not saying they were bad players, but
everyone
it seems to
for sure.
It seems to flow though. Like you either have a stable of good linebackers like you did last year, not saying the D-line was bad, or an excellent D-line like I expect the Hawkeyes to have this year. And to me, when I'm going, this is general too. Like when you're going through that, they kind of even themselves out. Like you can have the linebackers fill the gaps when the line's not doing as well, and vice versa. The line put the pressure on the other offense, so the linebackers can have easier holes and stuff like that. So I expect that's another reason why I'm not too worried about it, is because I think the front line is going to be have a lot of depth and be very effective. So
there's been an opportunity this spring too. Phil pointed out Ethan Herkett wasn't practicing the day we were there. It doesn't sound like he's practiced a lot this spring, but again, a kid like Herc has played plenty of ball, so he'll be all right. Brian Allen's missing this spring. He was in a sling for the bowl game too. But guys like Aaron Graves and Max Sloan, who boy, exploded onto the scene last year. I mean, Graves was already kind of in there, but Max had such massive plays, including the big one against Nebraska to force the fumble and recover it and get the game-winning field goal. But, you know, guys like Ken Merriweather, who had his first career sack, I believe that was against Troy, a kid out of Detroit. And, you know, again, talk about a room that's really well coached. Kelvin Bell and Jay Neiman, I mean, that's a group that always feels ready. And, yeah, you lose Y.A. Black, who, again, forget about his stat line. You know, the Y.A. Black effect is look at the linebackers and the opportunities they're getting and what your edge rushers are getting. That's a group that bringing in Pace and Hawthorne, man, it feels like there's a chance for that front seven if the new guys with all the experience in the linebacking core click quickly and get some good momentum going. Man, that's a fun front seven that's going to do a lot. Yeah, there's if you're watching on YouTube, Merriweather couldn't get his feet to celebrate against I guess it was Northwestern. He had that first career sack, but that was such a cool moment. You saw Will Hubert, 57, in there, a guy who had a recovered fumble, I think, against the Wildcats, and seen him a couple times during spring and fall sessions flash a little bit too. So it's, boy, yeah, Iowa defense, there's always stuff to look at and always stuff to be excited about. And so normally we talk about the secondary being such a strong point. They might need a little bit more of a learning curve just because there's guys in different spots, different responsibilities. But again, plenty of experience there. Plenty of experience really all around that group that maybe has to get used this spring to being in bigger positions with bigger opportunities, but certainly Iowa's defense tends to be Iowa's defense more often than not, despite what we saw a couple times in 2024. The most set it and forget it group, again, knock on all the wood, because it's when you say that's the group that ends up maybe needing some help or dealing with injuries or something like that. Special teams for Iowa, you got a great sophomore punter coming back and Reese Dakin, who had a really nice freshman campaign. You've got one of, if not the best kicker in the Big Ten and one of the best in the country, and Drew Stevens coming back again. And you have the awards show it, the best returner in the nation, and Caden Weegan, now on scholarship. Mike's hoping for 15, 18, 20 catches on offense too.
Maybe a little more.
Yeah, that too. But this is a group, and Scott Docterman, you'll hear him asking LeVar Woods about it. This is the group that really could get hit by that 105 cap on the roster and the walk-ons that can start there and really take off. We'll see what happens with this court ruling stuff, because now all of a sudden there's
didn't
a
they
chance
just say that
grandfathering in, which Kirk had talked about wanting to stair-step this kind of stuff, or what could happen. But as of right now, it is what it is. But LeVar Woods for a few minutes on just what a roster limit could do to special teams and just getting these guys ready to step in on kick and punt coverage and getting those opportunities that maybe they're not getting at their positions, specifically on offense and defense, but trying to grow those spots on the special team side. And then, of course, a little context to why solid is such a verboten word there in the special teams room.
How is that impacting you on a special teams level, that you're not going to have the extra 25 players to put on your kick units?
I'll start first with that in the specialist room itself, right? So our specialist room is trimmed down pretty tight right now. You know, the thought before typically is you have 3 guys for each position, a snapper, 3 snappers, 3 kickers, 3 punters, with the thought of, okay, you have a starter and a backup, guys that are always competing. You have a young guy you're trying to develop along to get in that mix. Those days, I think, are gone. So you're going to have 2 guys that you can count on to go in the game, because things happen and injuries happen, sicknesses happen, whatever happens. That the next guy's got to be ready to go. That's been a point in this program for years, right? The next man in mentality. I think you're going to see that more and more often, not only in that room, in the specialist room, but also across the board. You're starting to see it in regards to special teams. It's going to be hard to keep guys on your roster just for special teams, or guys that hey, maybe they can't cut it. We've had some guys that are coming to mind right now that maybe they weren't great at a position player, receiver or DB, but they were phenomenal special teams players. Those guys, I think, are going to go a little bit further and farther between. But I think everyone just needs to be ready. That's why we coach everyone the same way. So we're trying to get everyone ready to play, because you never know when you're going to get called on. Again, we put these kids in these positions, these drills, and these things that, to them that may not seem like much, but you can take that little snapshot and then you show it to them in special teams or show it to them on offense and defense, how it relates and how it helps them become a better football player. Then all of a sudden it clicks. I think we're seeing some of that because a lot of times when it's early and they're young, they don't always, it's hard, right? And they get in these awkward positions and it looks terrible to them and they can't figure it out. Then all of a sudden, the older they get, the more they understand the drill, the more they understand how it fits into football, they get better. And so that's what we're seeing right now. And as far as solid, this is going to, okay. So, happened in a meeting. We were watching practice, we're evaluating the film, we're watching, had a player, asked him how he felt about that ball, that punt he hit. There it is. Okay, so I gave you the punt piece. And he's like, it was solid. And I was like, solid? Like, that's like average. So we grade everything, right? So A, B, C, D, F. Okay, so I asked the guys, how did you feel about that? How did you feel about that ball? What grade that ball? So I know what you think an A plus is and what I know an F is. And he's like, yeah, it was pretty solid. It was, solid. And then it was not solid, okay? It was solid if you want to talk about high school punting and like, hey, I did this at this camp and that coach liked me and he followed me on Twitter and like stuff that I think is very average. And so it turned into solid. It became a very bad word in our room. I think I slammed my desk and like, I'm not trying to be solid. I'm not trying to be average. But they got the message, and now it's become a running joke in the specialist world. So, yeah. But I will tell you that player did this after that.
I love that. I just think LeVar, every time we talk to him, or anytime you talk to him, like off to the side or anything like that, he's a nice dude. Just a super nice guy. So picturing him doing the mental gymnastics there to find the PG version of that story as he described it to us. I mean, everyone gets heated on sidelines and you're in the moment and stuff too, but like thinking about that guy as him telling that story, then flipping out over the word solid is awesome. I love that. And the fact that that's their standard. And hey, look at the Iowa special teams room under LeVar. They've been far from solid in a good way. As he said, they've been going up and doing some really, really, really impressive things. You could argue across the board, punter, kicker, return, you're top 1 and 2 across the board in all those in the conference, and there's good arguments across the country too that you've got maybe the best top to bottom special teams unit in the country.
Yeah, you can make that argument. It's one of the things I think I called it silly and totally football.
Yeah.
Like you hear about these, and I use this term with endearment, like these wackos of football coaches that are just like, no, solid,
Football guys.
Yeah,
They're football guys.
They're football guys. If you do solid work at your job, you don't think, C plus D minus work, But no, I love it too. It's just one of those things that if you take someone who's not used to football and you take them around people that are like that, so, hell-bent on perfection, it just might seem silly on the outside, but you got to love it.
We haven't talked a ton about special teams this year, I think just because it's the most comforting spot right now. Again, Reese wasn't Torrey last year, but boy, his best was Torrey-esque, certainly. Drew, man, even the one, he missed that field goal, I think it was maybe against Wisconsin, where he put it like, not just off the upright, but almost hit the top of the upright from like 53 or 54, whatever it was. Like, his legs nuts and him drilling that field goal against Nebraska is going to be an all-time moment. And then Caden doing what he does, with the punt return against Northwestern, the kick return against Mizzou. I'll still grandfather in that Illinois State punt return. TJ Hall didn't hold anybody. Maybe he did. Who knows? But, I mean, he just has
You don't like to give up those punt returns that don't actually count, do you?
I'm collecting a video library of epic moments. But man, I mean, you got to replace the coverage guys like we talked about in Jackson and Jaden and Carson.
Sure. The biggest one to me is the long snapper because you don't normally bring a transfer long snapper.
And as that kid said, I was very surprised to see, and I think he said it was funny, like how excited these guys are about long snapping.
Yeah.
Hey, welcome to Iowa, Brian Worrell.
But I think because the other one they have is pretty young, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
Ike, yeah, he's like a sophomore. This
Lamar
other guy
had
has
great things
1
to say
year.
about him. He's like, hey, he's great. He just hasn't played. But if you can bring in a guy who has a lot of experience.
Because they only had one long snapper on the roster, if I'm right, this heading into spring.
He was the only true one, yeah. I think Ty Nissen was in there. He's kind of a backup punter. He was the holder. Shout out to his brother Cade, who's a great content creator.
Me being a former long snapper, you know,
Yeah, Mike,
high
Mike,
school.
bring your experience.
2 or 3 years. It's one of those positions where you don't think about it until they start snapping it over punters' heads.
Yeah, but
or
again,
screwing up a field goal. And
Iowa hasn't thought about that for
You haven't
the
had
Luke
to.
Elkin era, and that's it's going to take. If there is one rough
Uh-huh.
snap out there, all of a sudden that thing you didn't have to take for granted for half a decade, basically.
Yeah.
You know, and they've had Jackson Subert out of Williamsburg and Kluve, and going back to when I was in college, Andrew Schultz. Like they've just always.
Sure.
You got 15, 20 years of just damn good long snappers.
Yeah, Casey Kreider too, back in the
Casey
day.
Kreider,
He
yeah,
just
who's
ended up a NFL career.
Still in the league. Yeah.
Oh, he's still in the league? I thought he retired.
No, I think he's still out there.
Oh, okay.
Google quick.
Google that real
I'm-
quick.
I'm
But
pretty
no,
sure, Casey's still doing his thing with the Giants.
I'll add that to my things to watch for. I mean, if you're a fan, you probably won't want to do it, but I kind of want to watch it and see how this. I guess the new guy probably won't be on in practice tomorrow, but
No. Casey Kreider, Pro Bowler in 2018. He's still out there. He'll play his 143rd game coming up this season. He was he was like a student teacher or something at Regina for a minute there too. I did a story back in like 17 or 18 with him.
yeah.
Some sort of like robotics thing. I mean, yeah, he's doing just fine.
That's kind of why Luke Elkin might not make a starting role. He'll probably be like on a practice squad or something if they have those.
those
Just
are the
because those guys they stay there for 20 years because they're so good at their craft, and the difference between a pro and a college snapper is the consistency, obviously, but it is just one of those things you have to repetition, and 2 bad snaps and you could be cut.
Yeah, when I was up in Michigan, Don Molbach was the longtime long snapper for the Lions. Same thing. I think he was a free agent guy. Spent a year, or not even a year, with Baltimore. Went to the Lions, and he was there for 15, 16 years. And that dude went through 0-16, the resurgence. Making some progress under Caldwell. Went through Patricia, and now he's finished up there with Dan Campbell. But man, those guys stick around, and if you're good at that job, you're set in the NFL. I mean, it's a really cool opportunity that Luke's got, and hopefully he can make the most of that. So special teams, we're trying not to think about it too much.
One
this
last
year, go ahead.
special team question for you. Drew Stevens, this will be his senior year. 88.9% his freshman year from field goals, 16 of 18. Sophomore year, he had that kind of slump, missed 8 kicks, 69%. Not nice. And last year, he jumped back up, 2023, 87. Do you think he eclipses 90 this year? 90%? I guess it depends if...
But he could end up, I think KGAN still has the career field goal percentage record.
Yeah, didn't he didn't miss a kick until right before halftime with the Orange Bowl.
Comparing a guy to KGAN, which I know we've done we've done it with Keith Duncan and a bunch of other guys. But man, like out of this great group of kickers with, Miguel Recinos only had 1 year really, but he was great. Caleb Shudak was such a good kicker. Going back to Schlicker and all these other guys. Mike Meyer, Pride of Dubuque. Man, Drew has shown he's got the opportunity to be the best of all of them. And that's, he's, we kicked the Groza word around for Duncan, certainly going into his senior year, but man, like the types of kicks that Drew has hit, and I think we'll all keep in the back of our head, like, should they have walked him out against Iowa State and tried, was it 66 or whatever it was? Like, the more you've watched him, and he was asked about that, Chad asked LeVar about that.
I was just going to bring that up.
Yeah.
I was going to say, it probably depends on how many 60-yarders they have him kick this year
I wouldn't be
second
shocked
quarter.
if he tries one from 65 this year.
That'd be insane.
He'll try a boomer, man. He'll try a boomer. And you know what? He'll get close.
Yeah.
If he hits it the way Drew Stevens can kick it, he'll get damn close.
Nate Kading had 95.2% in that Orange Bowl year. The only kick he missed was 10 yards out right before halftime at the Orange Bowl.
Yeah.
Against, it was 10-10 at that time, and they got blown out in the second half.
That's how that game had to go after C.J.
Yeah.
Jones, right? Man, yeah, Drew's
good.
Drew's got a chance, man. And what a great kid. I feel bad I didn't get a chance to talk to him the other day when the specialists were out there, but he's such a fun dude to talk to. Quiet confidence, and it's been fun. He's in the nitty-gritty of the kicking game, which if you want to be great, you gotta. So that's, yeah, I got high hopes for Drew Stevens, and yeah, it man, could be a special year. Really, really hoping. But we're hoping for a special Saturday tomorrow, getting to Kinnick. I'm going to be there with Patrick Smith covering everything. Mike's going to be there as a fan. I guess, try to snake draft this thing.
Yeah, I like
Kinda
this.
Go three,
just the three top
things we're
things
watching for. So I'll let Mike hit lead off here.
All right, good. Yeah, because we got to pivot if you
Can't
pick
imagine
one.
what you'll take with one.
Actually, that's not one if you're thinking Hank Brown. Actually, I'm what looking forward to the most is watching the wide receivers. How explosive, how effective they can be when they go to the scrimmages. Can they beat Deshaun Lee and TJ Hall and all those other guys? So that's number one for me. I'm excited to see this healthy group of wide receivers with a quarterback that might be a little more accurate. We'll still have to see that. But let's see how many plays they can make, because the last few open practices, Kids Day and scrimmages, it's been few plays from the wide receivers.
There's been a few. I still remember.
I think there were 2 catches at Kids Day last year to wideouts.
Yeah. Was it the spring or the summer? Might have been that one where Cade did his quad.
Yeah.
But like Seth and Deontay Vines, back-to-back plays had like 40-yard gains, and we were like, okay, the kid from Georgia's running really well. Vines maybe sparking, and like there were a couple nice plays by wide receivers. Seth had a really good. I feel like that was the summer. Yeah, there's not a whole lot of opportunities. I still think Sam Phillips could shine a little bit tomorrow. I hope he does. I'm really excited about him. If you're not going to take quarterbacks, I'll take quarterbacks. Not just Hank and him being the leader in the clubhouse, so to speak, going into 26 for that starting job. But I want to see what Jimmy looks like. I want to see what Jackson looks like a little bit, and just seeing how those guys are doing, particularly Hank and Jimmy, having got in December, how far along they are. And, Mark's probably not going to get pushed unless Mark just goes down, which he hasn't at any point in his career, so why start now? But I'm just excited to see what the quarterbacks look like and how the balls come out of their hands, the decision making, and what they do against a defense that, again, has some guys in different spots, but it still has a lot of experience. I think just watching this team go live and everything we've heard in the background over these last couple of weeks about the offense having some success, I want to see how much of a catalyst the quarterbacks are with that. So I'll cheat and take the quarterbacks, even though that's kind of the easy one to go towards. I'm really intrigued with this defensive line. I want to see Pace and Hawthorne and what they do. And granted, a spring scrimmage isn't the best place to get like a super intense read on the interior defensive line, but I want to see what they do, particularly against Logan Jones, one of the best centers in the Big Ten, maybe. Peep, we've been talking him up so much on the offensive line, him getting a chance to be in that right guard spot. Jennings Dunker, and then we'll see Bo Stevens, who's as experienced as a left guard you'll get, and then that left tackle spot. So I'm talking about both the lines. Can I do that? Can I do that in snake draft? Can I take the trenches?
Yeah, the trenches. Yeah.
All right,
Mine's a little. My next one is a little general too. It would have been a really good transition past on your first one. I want to see, because we've heard rumblings, you mentioned it, that the offense is really giving the defense fits, which hasn't been the case in the past 3 or 4 years in the offseason and spring and summer workouts. So I want to see, is that really true? Like, is the offense have the upper hand on the defense finally, which, in the offseason the past few years, we've been like, okay, is this offense going to turn around? Is this offense going to produce? It did last year on the ground, but not so much in the passing game. Is that the case now? So that's what I'm looking forward to. Who has the upper hand, offense or defense, when those ones are out there?
Gotcha. All right, you get one more on your snake.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right, you took my Hank Brown. All right. One of them or my third one is, who takes the ones at left tackle? I understand Bryce George come in. He could probably take that role come August. But I want to see that battle, because it was the one spot on the line that you didn't really know who was going to play there, Trevor Locke or Doetzler. So who's taking those one snaps? I imagine they'd rotate, but I want to see who the first one out there is.
Yeah, that's intriguing too. My third thing I'll really be locked in on, I think, is Cash. Is just watching that three-man rotation of X, who sounds like he's really starting to make some strides at free safety, such an important position, filling in for Quinn Schulte now. And then seeing Lutmer and Cohen just rotating in there. Those safeties, you're replacing a lot of stuff. X has obviously been back there, but he's in a new role. I think there's high hopes for Lutmer and Cohen, just the flashes that we've seen the last couple of years, that those are guys who go out there and can make impacts. Got his first career pick on a really nice play against UCLA. Cohen got his at Michigan State, and they've flashed in a couple other spots too. So the cash rotation is something I'm really plugged into. Honorable mention, if I can, one more snake.
Sure.
I want to see Alex Mota as a DB. Haven't watched him just to do anything and everything at Marion, and he's been banged up these last couple of years, whether it's legs or he was out there, I think, with a cast on his hand there for a little bit, initially making the switch. And Phil brought him up unprompted, and again, when these guys get brought up unprompted, sometimes when you're not asking for names, and he's already talking about Mota doing stuff there, man, I hope that kid has an opportunity to make something happen. It's a long road. He's only a few weeks into the spot, but I'd like to see if he flashes it all tomorrow.
Didn't he bring up Nestor last year unprompted?
Yeah. And,
yeah.
Hey, we'll see.
Well,
we'll see.
He's done it before where it's turned out weird. And, I think I got a really good highlight of Alex Mota when he was at Marion, because I used to go to a few Marion games back then. I need to dig that up.
Quarterback, wide receiver. I had
really
one.
Yeah.
They were against CCA, and they ran some crazy reverse pass because
Yeah.
he was a quarterback for a while and then moved to wide receiver. I think his senior year. And plug him in anywhere, and if he's healthy, he's going to figure something out and make a play. So I'm excited to see.
I want to throw in one last one too. Honorable mention. How many 60-yarders will Drew hit? Drew Stevens hit.
There we go.
Let him loose.
Is Reese going to do a behind-the-back punt again? Remember that in spring last year? We're like, did he just rope-a-dope a punt kind of like that? Went behind the back. It was cool. This was the quick one real quick. So day 2 of the NFL draft tonight, second and third rounds. The expectation is that Caleb Johnson goes in this round. Give me your top 3 Caleb Johnson all-time touchdowns.
Yeah, you didn't prep me for this.
Going back to 2022 as well.
Oh, okay. So I got 3. I mean, it's almost cheating because I see it on my Twitter timeline like every other day. In no particular order, I'll do Nebraska.
Yeah.
Michigan State last year, only because I was there, first time in Spartan Stadium, and that came out of nowhere. It really, Iowa's offense going to do crap.
And they needed something to come out of nowhere.
And I was like, okay, maybe they actually come and win this one. And then Illinois, 2023 for the title, Big Ten West title.
Yeah. I'm gonna take 3 that you didn't, not exactly snake rules. That Northwestern one last year where he spin moves a guy stiff arms.
Oh, sure.
It's one of my favorite shots I got last year, and I was really lucky to be right there, on the goal line. That to me is the quintessential Caleb Johnson run. I mean, that was just the power, the speed, the finesse, and a great finish. I love that run. His first ever touchdown against Nevada in 22. That rainy one where they had to evacuate.
9-hour game.
A couple times. Where guys that were at a wedding reception in Cedar Rapids drove down to Kenan at 12:30 in the morning to watch the end. That was another one where he got knocked sideways at one point, and I was again right there on the goal line too, and he powered his way in, and that was everyone's first thing of this kid out of Ohio's got a little something special, and I think he had another one later in that game at 3 in the morning, whatever it was. So I love that one. His first career one, the one against Northwestern. And man, if I had one more, I can't take the Nebraska one. He had, it's my own question, I don't really know. He had so many great ones against Minnesota. That first one against Illinois State this year, after he sat out the first half, people would kind of, talk about announcing your presence with authority, some Bull Durham there. You go, okay, yeah, Kamari started the game, and I think people are really high on Kamari as well. They should be, but that was Caleb's still around, and maybe he's got, he ran for 100 yards and a half. And you're like, all right. So those 3 really, really stick out to me. That Northwestern one might be my favorite, though, partially because I was in a great spot and got an awesome shot of it. But, man, that Illinois State one, just a reminder of okay, Caleb Johnson's still here. Don't forget about him. You had the foresight to pick him as offensive MVP, and, man,
sure. Yeah,
and then some.
If Iowa would have beat Iowa State last year, a couple of those touchdowns would be
that
a
little
memorable
wheel
one.
route he had. There were some fun ones for sure. But boy, Caleb Johnson, wherever he goes, I think everyone's got the.
Please no Chicago Bears. I don't want to see him.
How'd you feel about the Packers getting Matthew?
Oh, me and my friend were watching.
What a cool moment yesterday.
We were like, yes.
What an awesome. And shout out, was it Mark Murphy?
Mark Murphy,
made the call for him
last
to be
year, I think.
For the first time since 2002, and ESPN had the great shot of the whole crowd and just everyone arms up. What a cool
Everyone knew.
What an awesome.
I think he's going to be really good in this offense.
Yeah, Vikings got Donovan Jackson. I'm excited. You only get so excited about offensive line stuff, but man, he's a good one.
You needed it.
We'll see what happens tonight. Caleb probably off the board, and
couple of Cyclones probably too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
today.
There's going to be a lot of Iowa State guys out there, and just all the best to all the dudes we've covered over this thing. There's some guys that are going to get some opportunities here, and there's a lot of bold takes about the draft. Not going to be shocked if 10 years from now we're talking about a guy who either goes late round or is undrafted and he's still in the league and making the most of it. So it's what a fun group, and can't wait to see where a lot of these guys end up and what they do in the years to come.
It seems like the mock drafts are all over the place too, because I was looking at some I put together just like a kind of, here's what the experts are saying how Hawkeyes are going, and there's some that have like, I'm trying to think of a player like Y.A. Black going in the 5th round. And then others don't even have him in their top 7 rounds. And I'm like, do you just not know that he's, a good defensive tackle? Or is there so many players that it's just it's such a, grab bag?
Yeah, I'm really starting to think a lot of these folks that break down some of this stuff maybe are...
There are like thousands of players, I guess. But,
There's a lot.
Hundreds of players.
Yeah. It's a lot of work, but man, there's... SVP was talking about the other day of what's worse, all the pre-draft rambling about whatever, or the immediate post-draft grading.
Yeah, because you don't know. We were talking about last night.
Like somebody gave a C+ for, I forget what even ever pick it was. Like, that's too high. Like, you don't know. These are the same guys who said, like, what was it, like Bleacher Report or somebody in 2012 said the Seahawks had, like, the worst possible draft they could have had. And this is the draft where they got, like, Irvin and Russell Wilson and just like foundational guys for the Legion of Boom and that whole Super Bowl run and everything. Like nobody knows. Maybe the folks in the building know. Certainly the folks out of the building maybe don't. You
can't grade it until after like 5 years.
Yeah, exactly. But we want immediate reactions to things, so that's how that goes. Speaking of immediate reactions, be sure to tune in on Sunday for our post spring scrimmage pod. Do we want to do this at like 10 a.m., 11 a.m.?
That works for me. 11?
I said 2.
Let's go 11.
11? All right, we'll sleep in a little bit. So we'll be back here 11 a.m. Sunday, just breaking down everything from the scrimmage. Eye on the Hawks on Twitter. We'll get some stuff up throughout the...
Overreaction Sunday.
There you go, and the Iowa's News Now YouTube channel, everywhere else. I'll try to get a highlight reel up on the YouTube channel, but I say I'll do it. I mean, I'll send it to Mike and tell him to put it up on Saturday night, so please and thank you, Mike. And we'll get the interviews up there, so you'll have all the stuff to consume with your Saturday evening there. There's nothing to binge. Last of Us isn't on until Sunday night, so you got some time to fill. I'm just catching up on Last of Us, so I'm really into that right now. But then we'll get that pod down and break everything down on Sunday. And there's a chance that Sunday's podcast might be the last one we have in this setup, ? We'll see.
Yeah.
There's some things in the works.
Cooking. Last one, we're going on a hiatus because there's really not much to talk about, and we're not going to... I'm not a baseball expert, so I don't feel like educated enough to like talk about the Iowa baseball team, even though I might go to a game in a couple weeks when I think Oregon comes to town.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, I mean they're doing really well, but again, we're not baseball aficionados, and especially college baseball, so we're not going to dip into that. So we'll be back.
We have breaking transfer news.
Really?
South Dakota corner transfer Shahid Barros has signed with Iowa. 80 tackles, 3 interceptions the last 2 years with the Coyotes? ? I believe they're the Coyotes.
South Dakota?
South Dakota.
Yep.
Right. Steve Ferentz over there. Miles Taylor, former Iowa DB, is a position coach there, so there's some Iowa ties. So Shahid Barros coming in out of the transfer portal. Coming into Iowa, yeah, Matt Zenit.
So they got their... we were just talking about this.
I do not envy the workload that guys like...
Gosh, guys like Elliott.
Clough and...
Man, kudos to those
Mike
guys.
Holt and Bach. Man, like... There's
just
talk
talking
about
to
no
so
off
many
days, no days
18-year-olds
and there are
coaches
dudes that
and
are
stuff.
plugged into it. So shout out to them, and they got their finger on 90 different pulses. So there you go. Hey, great way to end this. I don't know if Shahid will be in the stadium Saturday, but I'm guessing guys like Bryce George and Bryant Worrell will maybe be around. We'll see if we get our first looks at them not playing, but just guys hanging out at Kinnick on a Saturday. I'm excited to see what the crowd's going to be like tomorrow. The fact that there is
a nice day too.
about it's going to be a nice day. Man, it's I said a few months ago, boy, they're going to be tailgating for hours at Kinnick after Mark Gronowski signed, and I think they still might, just because it's going to be a darn nice day, and I think there's still excitement about about this team this year. So we'll see. We'll check in tomorrow from Kinnick Stadium and get ready for the end of spring, and we look ahead to the fall. So we'll see you back here Sunday, 11 a.m. on the Iowa's News Now YouTube channel, or download it wherever you listen to podcasts after that. For Mike, I'm Mitch. Let's have a Saturday, a nice little Saturday, maybe some Home Depot afterwards, and then have enough time to come back on Sunday. See you then on Eye on the Hawks.